What is that thing on the chat? Compliance cow recorder.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's like the Firefly note-taking thing. It's external transcription tools.
Okay.
All right, it's 3 minutes past, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to the October 21st, 2025 SIG Multicluster call. And just a reminder that the CNCF Code of Conduct applies, so please be kind to one another. Not that we usually have problems in that area, but anyway. So today we just have scrub topics, and as usual, since my Zoom crashes when I share my screen, unfortunately, I'll enable screen sharing for everyone. And if you want to share your screen to discuss one of the issues or PRs that come up, feel free to do so. And the first one is the placement decision API. So I guess Mike or Ryan.
Yeah, I can go take a crack at it. So I think last night I made some updates as well, but I didn't change anything at all, just consistency fixes because I noticed me and Ryan were working on it and then there's a few places that needed like revisit. So essentially I did that. Minor fixes. I also brought up the thing that Stephen that you like, the fact that not all the placement decisions are workload correlated. Like the fact that you can have kind of like a controller keep pumping out these placement decision or keeping one up to date and then having the consumer uh, consume it. I also bring that up front a little bit more near the top as either a use case or also mentioning in the summary as well. So that's basically all that I've done to the cap. I think it reads and looks pretty good right now. So I think it's ready for another round of review. So if you're interested, please take a look. And this is for everyone, not just the sick leads, but anyone who are interested in the placement decision cap. I'll link it again here, and then please take a look. Ryan, I'm not sure if you want to add anything. That's all I have.
Looking good.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, so the paragraph you added at the start does make it clearer. So we discussed it last week. I discussed it last week with Jeremy, and one thing that came up is that it's hard. It's still not obvious in the stories at the end. What the keys are supposed to be. And so for example, in the changes you made yesterday, in story 2, you say, so the initiator is progressive rollout controller for a service or version. The rollout controller defines the rollout plan and requests placement from a scheduler or acts as the scheduler. And the scheduler creates updates the placement decision keyed to the release. But the release isn't actually defined anywhere. So it's not obvious what that's supposed to tie to. Right, and I see in story 5, you clarified that there might not be a placement key at all.
Yes, so the placement key is only when the workload is there.
Yeah, for a workload related. Yeah.
So you mentioned story number 2 is the one that I need to take a deeper look.
Yeah, but I'll leave
Yeah.
comments
Okay.
in the PR anyway. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for your patience as well. Jeremy, I don't know if you want to elaborate a little on this before we move on to the next one.
I'm sorry, I was running late this morning. I literally just joined.
All right, no worries. It's about the placement decision API. And so the PR has been updated to add a few sections clarifying that placement decisions can be keyed to a workload, but they don't have to be tied to a specific workload, and so they might not be keyed at all. Which was one of the concerns we had.
I'm still struggling with Stephen per our chat. I'm still struggling with it. It feels like it's one half of a placement protocol that we've developed, and from the use cases is still like it's not clear to me that it's easy to use this without actually having the proprietary integration with whatever is making the placement request that goes with the decision. And I understand that there's a generic use case saying like, the decision is like prefer this cluster over anything else or something like that, but that feels like a different API than a workload placement API. And so I'm still kind of struggling on this breakdown for like by standardizing the protocol, my assumption is that we want to create some decoupling, but without having that placement request side of the API or something kind of filling that role, it seems like the coupling is still very present. And I also assume my understanding is that we do have a plan to maybe introduce that in the future. But yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, actually, let me clarify one thing just to be clear. I think currently the decoupling, I'm not 100% sure what decoupling means here. So the flow is with this API, what achieves is people are still going to need to use, OCM, Kamada, Kubefleet, and Gazillion, whatever other scheduling mechanism. So that API we cannot replace. But the one thing we can replace or make it a lot easier is for any of these projects who wants to integrate with Argo CD or MultiQ or other multi-cluster needed project, but they don't have a scheduling component. That integration becomes standard. So on one side, you are right. We are not getting to the point of everybody can interchange all these scheduling projects that this API can't. But this API achieved was so each project doesn't have to write their own integration point with Argo CD, or actually it's other way around. Argo CD doesn't need to write an integration point with everyone else, and same as MultiQ and other stuffs. That kind of the reason for this API. But again, you're right. You still have to do the proprietary API side.
But like the decision tells me where to place something with a key, but what do I do with that?
Each individual project like Argo CD, they do have a plugin point, can take in that decision, and you need another controller. Basically, Argo CD controller reads, not Argo CD controller, but Argo CD related controller to read that decision and plugging into the Argo CD specific interface. So we will have one piece of code for each individual multi-cluster project. Instead of if without this API, currently Argo CD, if they want to go integrate, get OCM's result, it needs to write one. For Kubefleet, need to write another one. So with this API, basically, you just need one that can read everyone's decision. So you do need that extra work for each individual project.
But so I have a scheduler, I have Argo, I have to provide let's say I have my foo resource that I'm trying to schedule. So I want to schedule my foo. So I have to write a scheduler plugin to teach the scheduler what a foo is, so that the scheduler can know how to schedule foo.
Foo is a resource. You mean like the
Yeah, or
something
a
that
workload.
work.
Like it's a workload, right? Like it's a bundle of config.
Okay.
And then my scheduler outputs a placement decision using this format. And then I also have to write a foo workload plugin for Argo, so that Argo knows what to.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with foo. The plugin doesn't know anything about the
But
resource
right, but
type.
what is being placed?
Placed is foo. Yeah, foo is the resource is being placed. Yeah.
And the scheduler needs to know what a foo is to know how to place it.
Scheduler needs to,
And
but the Argo CD doesn't.
it's
Not
just
Argo CD.
placing, or whatever is just placing the bundle of resources. But how does it even know what a foo is? Because I just get a key, right? So I still need to have a plugin so that it knows.
So that's why there's a key. Okay. Yeah, Mike.
Here, so we're the proposal, the way I understand it, we're just pushing, or there's a push to put the piece in the middle, which is the how we make the plan. The plugin, Jeremy, to your point, if it's not Argo or it's not Flux or it's not, whatever the consumer is, you would have to write one. But the idea would be that, let's say you wrote one for consuming for placing foo based on a decision, you would be able to reuse the schedulers that are already in place for OCM, for all the different ones that have implemented the SIG for the placement.
But they would also need a plugin to know what a foo is to schedule it, right?
That's a part. I don't think so.
I think it depends on what you mean by the detail of the foo that you need to schedule. This, like the simplicity, like the simplistic, a bunch of the simplistic, or maybe generic is a better way to put it. A bunch of the generic scheduling is already built into a bunch of these and would be there. But if there's something very specific about how you play, how you choose the cluster that the foo goes into, then yes, maybe you would write a scheduling side. But that scheduler would then also be available for use for placing Argo apps, or pick your plugin on the other end.
But like there's like super simplistic scheduling, which is like prefer this cluster over everything else, which is a totally valid use case, right? But then there's like anything workload aware has some kind of like it needs to know about the workload and the implications of placing it, right? Because scheduling involves or assumes, or I assume, and happy to be corrected, that it basically requires some form of resource consumption. And so I need to know about the resources that workload are actually going to consume. And
let me share my screen. I think that we have a diagram on this. If I can find it right.
But like, let's say you have an app that consumes GPUs, for example. You could write a scheduler that has some, that looks at all kinds of different metrics that allows it to decide which cluster it goes on. But on the far side that delivers, it's just an app or a manifest. So maybe it's Argo that's consuming it, maybe it's Flux that's consuming it, maybe it's, some other third party that's implemented a plugin that can consume the placement decision. On the flip side, if your payload requires something special, to your point, Jeremy, you would have had to write the plugin to do whatever you needed with. Maybe it's with Flux, or maybe it's with something else.
Right. And I guess that's the like, if it's just a manifest, how do we, like, the decision doesn't point at the manifest?
Yeah, exactly. Here is the diagram we have on this AP. I think the key here is, so when the initiator does the placement API, it definitely has to have most likely we need to have the resource, because each resource, it has its own special case. So when you do when the scheduling part, it will take into account what the resource is. Right? It needs to have that, and then the whatever the scheduler writes this placement decision. When we have this one, this placement decision doesn't have any resource information in it anymore, right? But by the time we need to do the ALM, whatever this Argo CD GitOps rollouts, things like that, we also need to provide this is the placement key. So it gives the workload and the placement. So the workload, the full happens here too. But this is again proprietary for depends on whatever this part is, right? The full will come in here, and with the placement key. With the placement key, by the time this this piece of again Argo CD or multicluster needs to place the workload. So this part also needs to know the workload. Both sides needs to know the workload. This full. Both sides needs to know the full. And both sides are proprietary APIs. They all have their own ways. But the only thing we saved is this guy. So instead of having to call a special scheduler, we just read from the placement decisions, whatever the schedule is, reads from the scheduling decision. And we have this key. So with this placement key, we know which placement decision needs to get.
I do follow this
too.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that like this diagram is actually the one I was kind of looking at that raised the question. So like you kind of said it, like so we have the initiator. In both, we talked to the placement concept, which is vendor specific or workload specific, and we have a workload, which is workload specific. And so effective, like both of the arrows between placement and scheduler and workload and the AI/ML pipeline, GitOps engine, whatever, are some sort of workload aware plugin that I need to write. So there's some kind of workload specific plugin I need for both my scheduler and my orchestration layer, right? And here we and we do introduce a placement decision that the scheduler can write and the other tool can read, but I still need a proprietary plugin on both ends of it. And so we do abstract this one part, but since I'm already writing a proprietary plugin, I'm curious what I'm getting out of the standardized placement decision.
When you say the proprietary plugin, what does that mean? So proprietary plugin basically is this one.
No, on the other side, right? Like I need to teach my scheduler what a foo is. The other side, on the left side of the scheduler box.
You mean this side?
That error, yeah. I need to teach my scheduler how to understand the request for a foo placement, and I need to teach my rollout system how to deploy a foo.
These two currently, we don't, at least from the projects we see, OCM, Kamada, Kubefleet, Argo CD, MultiQ, none of them have these proprietary plugins. Those are building capabilities.
When I create a new,
they have their own like they built generic plugins. I guess, Jeremy, it's maybe more so for like the specific case of something that isn't sort of standard manifest aware deployments that we need something special, or that we're talking about. Because if you're doing standard manifest, then implementations that are general, I mean, they are proprietary to Argo, but like the Argo implementation or the actions or the, or anybody else who's already has something implemented, those are functional. If we need to do something special beyond deliver a manifest or deliver and manipulate a manifest beyond those capabilities, then yeah, you'd have to build the right side and you have to have the left side that does something special to create that placement decision.
Okay, so that makes sense. So like this like I'm not like stateful set. I said foo and not something like stateful set because I assume that everything is implemented like the familiar apps. But there are a lot of custom application constructs out there, and so that's kind of what I was getting at is like if I'm using something that like if I'm doing something that isn't standard,
But that again is not related to what this API is. We're not solving. Just to be clear, we're not solving. Let's just to be clear. Let me I'll let Mike. He has his hand down. Just let me
I'm
finish the
sorry,
last
Mike.
sentence. Is we're not solving that problem. So the problem was I think all these things can schedule, deployment stateful sets, the common, the Kubernetes ones, and if you have a CR, some kind of even like leaders sets, these may not be there. This definitely don't solve that problem. If you have a new leader set and scheduler needs to finish schedule that we cannot solve. It's not something with this API we can solve. It's not related to how this. What we solve is now currently you already have deployment. Say again, Google Fleets, everybody can solve deployment. Argo CD can place application, and then now at Argo CD and the Kubernetes Fleet and the OCM, we now have to have three here, basically. This 3 reads become 1 reads. That's it. That's the purpose of this API. Anyway, yeah. Mike.
Okay.
So Jeremy, I want to touch up on what you mentioned, like right at the beginning. You mentioned that we do have plan to standardize placement API, like not this particular KEP, but like the actual placement API. Is that kind of like on the SIG MC agenda, so to speak? Because I mean, if you think having that placement KEP will help clarify things, like I'm just suggesting maybe we can get that started as well, right? Like maybe in parallel, and then will that help?
So actually, maybe it's some of the terminology here that's confusing me. I thought the plan was to come up with that standardization, but actually from this description, Ryan, your description, I think we are actually standardizing it. The placement request is just a key. Is that correct? Like basically some request has been made because like this KEP talks about in the terminology that the placement key associates the placement request with the end decision with the workload. But the key is basically there is no placement request at all. We're just promising that a scheduler will create a decision with a key.
Yeah.
And a workload will be labeled with a key.
Yeah.
And so so this KEP actually does define the request. And the request is basically some scheduler specific thing, but we need but must have this key.
Yeah, that's just so you can know when we come here, we know which decision to read. That's it. The key is for this plugin to know. Otherwise, we have many decisions standing out there, right? You now need to place some workload. Which decision you get from? That's it. Oh, for full, I need to read the decision full. So that's it. That's how. That's why we need this key. I don't know if it's an API or something. It's just a mechanism for the whatever this components to know which decision I need to take.
Right. Yeah. I think that is the API. It's just a very simple API, and I think that
Yeah. That's it. That's just we want to, instead of 5 or 10 of them, we just make them 1. Anybody who implements this one, you can get this for free because someone else has done this. You don't have to write your own proprietary. That's kind of the whole point. That's it. We are not solving any of these things.
That makes sense. And I'm apologize because it seemed to be more clear to others than to me. Let me take a pass maybe at a suggested update to the KEP, because I think after this walkthrough, it now makes sense. But from reading the KEP, it didn't.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot to parse.
Yeah, sure. I think John has his hand up.
Yeah, it was just more as an addition. It does indeed have a smaller scope, so it doesn't need to know about all the workload specifics. Because when reading through this, and I'm mostly Argo CD and multi-queue minded, so I look, using that perspective, then it seems obvious. But yeah, that's just a matter of perspective, of course. And then if someone else reads it and it's not obvious, then it might seem like there's either it's too small or something's missing. But yeah, otherwise that it should be very complete. There's one thing I did want to note. I noticed that we don't, nobody has essentially put in a part where when you move a decision somewhere else, so you ask for a decision and it will give you a decision, or you ask for a placement and it will give you a placement decision. That has a benefit where you now have a shared API essentially, or a shared specification, but also the specifics that go into coming up with possible placement decisions. Right now, an engine that is, say, native to Argo, it will only work with Argo. It's not even a separate controller or a separate plugin. It's just something that's just natively built in. And then MultiQ implements its own. So now you have two different ways to express possible matrices of possible outcomes. And if you, at first pass, you have your placements and your placement decisions, you have at least something, but then later down the line, I would expect that you would be able to influence those, where you could say, well, maybe I want to have some sort of heuristic or algorithm where your placement controller will be able to, well, when you're Argo or when you're MultiQ, you can delegate those tasks, and that would already work without adjusting the spec. So that is a side effect, or a positive side effect, I suppose. But that is something that when I was just reading it, wasn't necessarily clear, but I don't know if that is the intention, that specifying that in too much detail in this cap might be overdoing it. I don't know, but just 2 cents.
I think maybe you can add a comment there to be clear, so that we can address that.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that.
I think I tried to adjust that in one of the one of the many PR that I push, John. So yeah, maybe it got overwritten or something, but I did mention that how it's beneficial to have the placement decision for multiple different parties of consumers to use the same one.
I do recall that it must have been like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Just have a quick pass again. I mean, I'll help where I can, but yeah, I'll just go through the PRs and see if it's in there, and if it got lost on the way, or if I just didn't read it right. But yeah, I'll recheck, definitely.
All right, thanks. So I think we can move on. That was productive. So the next one was CRD add label with CRD version, but that's been merged. So I'm not sure why it was added to the scrub, unless Arthur, you had something to add.
No, I didn't add it. It's probably copied from last week, I guess.
Yeah, from last week.
Yeah, it's my bad. I just copied it.
All right, yeah, no worries. The next one is the cluster specific auth info fields for cluster profile.
This one, we just get a update on this one. I think we have the main author is in Australia, so tomorrow or depends on your time zone. We have an APAC meeting. I think we will let him describe. And Children, I hope Children is there. So Children is also one of those originators of this proposal. So I will let them try to present that and give more detailed explanation there.
Okay. All right, thanks. Then there was so still the rename the credential provider field, and Cornton's approved it.
Oh, okay, cool. Then
but there's still a few comments.
I addressed your comments last week. The new one yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's still a few accessor with an E hanging around. And Corentin found a few other
Okay,
typos.
then I'll address it.
Yeah, thanks. But then, yeah, I think it should be good to go once all those are addressed. So Corentin did make a good point though that so in the current implementation, you can have the old field and the new field populated. It might make sense to and all the values are taken into account. It might make more sense to just ignore the old field if the new field is populated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I'd expect,
yeah,
implementation to use one or the other, but not both. Yeah, it's just some care to take around migrations for that one, but yeah, it should be possible to just ignore the old one. Yeah. And then the last two in the scrub are the traffic distribution and internal policies field. Kept update and code PR. And so Arthur updated both of these to address Mike's comments and Zing's comments from just a few days ago. To add links to the service docs. And the way it's currently phrased, it just works with the latest changes to service traffic distribution with prefer same zone and prefer same cluster, I think, instead of prefer close or in addition to prefer close. So I think that's okay. Anything you want to add, Arthur?
No, not really. I mean, to be honest, I'm not. Well, I was not against like leaking the service doc, but like probably not specifying the exact field because I don't know for you, but in Silem I probably won't even filter out things. I would just like read from the service and do the reconciliation across all service and boom. So
yeah, it's just a pass through. Same as similar to the label copying stuff.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. So let's see if Mike and Zing respond, sorry. And the second one, implementation, I think. Yeah, it's just tied to the kept change anyway, so there's nothing special. All right. So that's the end of the agenda. And if nobody else has anything to bring up, we can end the call. All right, sounds like there's nothing else to talk about. So I'll add the cluster-specific auth info field to the agenda for Thursday's call. And I'll see you next week.
Next week? So will you be there?
I'll be there on Thursday. But yeah, I'll see those of you who are in the APAC call on Thursday and the rest of you next week.
Thank you.
All right, have a good rest of the week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good discussion.